We welcome students, colleagues, faculty, and invited guests here today to hear Mr. Gordon Daines, University Archivist and Assistant Chair of the Department of Manuscripts in the L. Tom Perry Special Collections Division of the Library, deliver today's House of Learning lecture entitled Training Teachers and Learning to Lead, Brigham Young University, the Church College of Hawaii, and the Role of Higher Education in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The library sponsors two main lectures and lecture series, the House of Learning Lectures and the Alice Louise Reynolds Women in Scholarship Lecture. Through these lectures, the library brings together scholars and students to engage in a civil discussion of ideas, and in so doing, the library contributes to building a learned community which fosters the faithful life of the mind. The House of Learning Lectures series title is taken from the 88th section of the Doctrine and Covenants, verse 119, where the Lord instructs the saints to prepare every needful thing, even a house of learning. Because the library is the campus repository for the literature of all academic disciplines and scholarship, the library is well positioned to be considered BYU's House of Learning. The Harold B. Lee Library takes seriously its campus role as the intellectual heart of inquiry and knowledge, and is honored to provide this House of Learning lecture today. Now, about today's lecturer. J. Gordon Daines III is University Archivist and Assistant Department Chair of the Department of Manuscripts in the L. Tom Perry Special Collections Library. He earned his BA from Brigham Young University and his MA from the University of Chicago, and did archival training at Western Washington University. He is the author of Charting the Future of Brigham Young University, Franklin S. Harris and the Changing Landscape of the Church's Educational Network, 1921 to 1926, and has also written and produced several guides to the historical collections held by the University Archives, including an annotated bibliography of secondary sources related to BYU's history. It gives great pleasure to welcome today's House of Learning lecturer, Mr. Gordon Daines.
Thank you. I appreciate you for being here. One of the remarkable things about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is its strong ties with higher education. It sponsors 3 universities that aim at proving to the world that academic excellence and spiritual striving can coexist. This emphasis on the intermingling of the sacred and the secular is unique in an American academic environment where the free exercise of religion does not expand to the dominant intellectual centers of our culture. This paper examines the role of higher education in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, with a particular emphasis on the changing rhetoric of justification for involvement with its institutions of higher education. A particular emphasis will be placed on the rhetoric surrounding Brigham Young University and the Church College of Hawaii. Education is at the center of Latter-day Saint theology. Formal educational systems began to develop within the church beginning in 1830. The first of these formal systems was the School of the Prophets. The School of the Prophets was established in Kirtland, Ohio in December 1832 to prepare selected members for missionary work. It also aimed to teach members about virtually everything else, as the scriptures say, things both in heaven and in earth and under the earth, things which have been, things which are, things which must shortly come to pass. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints first became involved with higher education with the passage of the City Charter of Nauvoo in 1840. The Latter-day Saints had fled to Illinois in 1839 following persecution in Missouri, and in 1840 had established themselves on the banks of the Mississippi River in Commerce, Illinois. They soon decided that Commerce wasn't a suitable name for their city, and they renamed it Nauvoo, and applied to the Illinois State Legislature for a city charter. Among other things, the city charter granted the citizens of Nauvoo the right to establish and organize an institution of learning within the limits of the city for the teaching of the arts, sciences, and learned professions, to be called the University of the City of Nauvoo. The University of Nauvoo drew heavily on the Protestant educational tradition that aimed to wrap secular teachings with Christianity. It was also an attempt by church leaders to provide educational opportunities for the, quote, plain people with little education or experience in large affairs, close quote, who had joined the church in large numbers beginning with its establishment in 1830. Realizing that a common level of learning needed to be established before church members could take advantage of the opportunities offered by a university, the City Council transferred jurisdiction of the city's elementary schools to the University of Nauvoo's Board of Trustees. This created a dual purpose for the University of Nauvoo, making it responsible for preparing the teachers to teach in the elementary and secondary schools of the city, while at the same time providing opportunities for higher learning and education for those who qualified and desired it. Church leaders were very supportive of the new institution, and in January 1841, the First Presidency issued a statement that underscored the importance of the university and its dual mission. Quote, "The University of the City of Nauvoo will enable us to teach our children wisdom, to instruct them in all the knowledge and learning, in the arts, sciences, and learned professions. We hope to make this institution one of the great lights of the world, and by and through it to diffuse that kind of knowledge which will be of practicable utility and for the public good and also for private and individual happiness. The regents of the university will take the general supervision of all matters appertaining to education, from common schools up to the branches of a most liberal collegiate course. They will establish a regular system of education and hand over the pupil from teacher to professor until the regular gradation is consummated and the education finished." Close quote. Church leaders understood that the success of the university depended on having students who were qualified to participate in higher education, and strongly supported the university's role in improving the educational attainments of church members. They also realized that higher education provided individuals with a way to improve their lives. At the heart of the university project were two competing goals. One, the creation of community, and two, the enabling of individuals to improve themselves. Community building is a fundamental element of the theology of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Joseph Smith taught that, quote, "the greatest temporal and spiritual blessings, which always come from faithfulness and concerted effort, never attended individual exertion or enterprise," close quote. Some of the prophet's other teachings further elaborate on this point by describing the way that an ideal community should look. It would involve, quote, "the gathering of the elect of the Lord out of every nation on earth, and bringing them to the place of the Lord of hosts, when the city of righteousness shall be built, and where the people shall be of one heart and one mind," close quote. Being of one heart and one mind is critical to this type of community. Joseph Smith and other church leaders understood the role of education in creating this unified community. The important role of education was described in an early article in the Evening and Morning Star, which stated that, quote, "in order to do this as it should be, it is necessary that children should be taught in the rudiments of common learning, out of the best books, and then, as they grow up, they can be qualified to search the Scriptures and acquire the knowledge of the Lord, become heirs of the kingdom, and guided by the Holy Spirit, which is a never-failing promise to the saints, they will walk in all the commandments of the Lord blameless in thanksgiving forever," close quote. At the same time that education was viewed as a critical component to the creation of community, it was also seen as a way for Latter-day Saints to increase their individual capacity for successful lives. particularly if the education was practical. In his inaugural address as mayor of Nauvoo, John C. Bennett described the role of the newly established University of Nauvoo. He stated that our university should be a utilitarian institution, and competent, industrious teachers and professors should be immediately selected for the several departments. He further elaborated on what he meant by utilitarian by stating that education should always be of a purely practical character, for such and such alone is calculated to perfect the happiness and prosperity of our fellow citizens. Practical education allowed the saints to care for their temporal needs in a way that allowed them time to engage in spiritual activities and community building. The University of Nauvoo allowed for individuals to attain as much education as they desired, while at the same time it provided a venue for training teachers who could provide the rudiments of common learning to all Latter-day Saints. Thus, the university project was an important part of the prophet Joseph Smith's attempt to create a self-sufficient community of saints, a community of individuals who could work out their salvation together. The University of the City of Nauvoo was officially organized in February 1841 with John C. Bennett as chancellor. Bennett and the other trustees worked over the next several months to prepare the institution to offer courses. In August of 1841, the Department of English Literature and Mathematics was in operation under the tuition of Professor Orson Pratt. The University of Nauvoo never had a central campus because of other church priorities, and classes were often held in private homes and other public buildings. The early faculty included Orson Pratt, who taught English literature and mathematics, Parley Pratt, who taught English, mathematics, and science, Orson Spencer, who taught foreign languages, Gustavus Hills, who taught music, and Sidney Rigdon, who taught rhetoric and belles lettres, as well as church history. Among the many courses offered to students were mathematics, astronomy, chemistry, philosophy, music, and foreign languages. Classes were held from 1841 until 1844, when the Latter-day Saints were driven from Nauvoo. The martyrdom of Joseph Smith in 1844 and the subsequent repeal of the Nauvoo Charter in 1845 abruptly ended the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints' first venture into higher education. The expulsion of the Latter-day Saints from Illinois and the contingencies of establishing a new home in the arid Great Basin prevented them from trying to establish another university until 1850, which in and of itself is remarkable that they would try. Following the martyrdom of Joseph Smith, Brigham Young assumed leadership of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He led the Latter-day Saints westward, hoping to find a place of refuge from the persecution that they had suffered almost continuously from the establishment of the church in 1830. Brigham Young not only inherited Joseph Smith's leadership mantle, he also became heir to many of Joseph's educational ideals, ideals that Brigham further developed and augmented with his own pragmatic beliefs. He encouraged the Latter-day Saints to obtain, quote, a copy of every valuable treatise on education, every book, map, chart, or diagram that may contain interesting, useful, and attractive matter to gain the attention of children and cause them to love to learn to read. And also every historical, mathematical, scientific, practical, and all other variety of useful and interesting writings, maps, etc., to present to the general church recorder when they shall arrive at their destination, from which important and interesting matter may be gleaned to compile the most valuable works on science and subject for the benefit of the rising generation, close quote. This advice was given shortly before the Latter-day Saints embarked on their arduous journey westward, and many heeded that advice. The books and other materials carried west by the Latter-day Saints were an important foundation stone when church leadership decided to revive the university project that had first been attempted in Nauvoo. Once in Utah, the church revived its educational endeavors with the establishment of common schools, stake academies, and colleges and universities. A major part of the Latter-day Saints' educational vision was the establishment of a university on the Nauvoo plan. That is, an extensive school system headed by a university which would be responsible both for teaching at the higher levels and for the preparation of teachers for elementary and secondary schools. The University of Deseret opened in 1850, and in 1851, the First Presidency of the Church issued a statement strongly supporting the university and indicating what they saw to be its principal mission. They wrote, quote, "The parent school is in successful operation in the Council House under the tuition of Chancellor O. Spencer and Regent W. W. Phelps. The design of this school is to prepare its pupils to become teachers, and for all who may desire to advance in the higher branches of education. It is designed for the parent school to be open continually," close quote. The University of Deseret was clearly following the pattern established in Nauvoo. It was to be the complete school system of Utah Territory, and the Board of Regents had the commission to see that education at all levels was instigated and kept in operation. Training teachers at the university was of paramount importance because teachers were needed in the schools that would supply the students to go to the university. This situation created a paradox for the administrators of the university because they needed students who had trained for university work to be trained as teachers, but the lack of good schools in the territory meant that few students were prepared for university work. The University of Deseret operated out of a variety of locations before financial difficulties caused it to suspend operations in 1852. Although the university had closed its doors and was not offering classes, its administrators continued to direct the developing common schools throughout the territory and pushed other educational reforms. The university gained new life in 1867 when Brigham Young proposed reopening it as a high school and then slowly reopening the rest of the university. Conditions had changed enough in the territory, particularly in regards to the availability of elementary education, that these plans were now viable. The commercial department of the university reopened its doors in 1868, and the rest of the university followed suit in 1869 under the direction of John R. Park. The university operated as the University of Deseret from 1869 until 1892, when it was renamed the University of Utah. The early curriculum of the University of Deseret and the other territorial schools was heavily influenced by church attitudes and teachings. This was not a problem as long as the population of the territory remained heavily Latter-day Saint. However, beginning in the 1860s, the non-LDS population began to burgeon, and they were particularly bothered by the intermixing of religion and education in territorial schools, particularly because the religion being taught was not their religion. Utah education quickly became a battleground as each group sought to influence the educational curriculum. Brigham Young and other church leaders feared that the control of the educational curriculum would eventually pass from their hands. Their fears were prescient. Although control of the educational curriculum had begun to shift to the non-LDS stakeholders in the early 1870s, the passage of the Edmunds-Tucker Act in 1887 greatly accelerated the growing secularization of the public schools. Concerned by the growing secularization of the public educational system, including the University of Deseret, Church President Brigham Young began looking for new ways to accomplish his educational vision. Brigham Young began to consider establishing an institution of higher education in his name in the early 1870s. His correspondence with Thomas L. Kane documents the development of this idea. Thomas L. Kane was a prominent politician, Civil War general, abolitionist, and philanthropist who had become quite friendly with the Latter-day Saints and carried on an extensive correspondence with Brigham Young. In late 1873, Kane wrote that, quote, "The most cheery and probably the most important feature of the tidings brought by Mr. Cannon is your resolve to found an educational institution worthy to bear your name. It is impossible to deprecate too seriously the growing practice of sending your bright youths abroad, to lay the basis of the opinions of their lives on the crumbling foundations of modern unfaith and specialism. Why should you not inaugurate a system of education informed upon by your own experience of the world, embodying your own dearly earned wisdom, and calculated peradventure to endure for ages with the stamp of your originality upon it?" close quote. Kane continued his letter by underscoring what he saw as the benefits of establishing a university under direct church control. He advised Young that, quote, the young fledglings who would resort to our Eastern seminaries of learning to learn what you will hardly be able to unteach them all their days should even now be training in the Brigham Young University, a normal college of the highest grade, to officiate as Zion tutors and professors, close quote. Kane's advice might have reminded Brigham Young of the educational vision that had led to the establishment of the University of Nauvoo, particularly his comments about establishing a normal college, or in other words, a teacher training institution. Young already had his eye on a potential school in Utah County. In 1869, the University of Deseret had established a branch campus in Provo called the Timpanogos branch of the University of Deseret. The young school was directed by Warren and Dusenberry and was quite popular. It was also housed in the Lewis Building, which coincidentally happened to be owned by Brigham Young. In 1875, when the Timpanogos branch was in danger of closing because of the financial difficulties of the University of Deseret, Young stepped in and took over the school. The doors of the Timpanogos branch closed one evening, and the next morning the school was reopened as the Brigham Young Academy. Young had a specific vision of what he hoped the school would be able to accomplish. The deed of trust establishing the school specifies that, quote, the beneficiaries of this academy shall be members in good standing of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or shall be the children of such members. And each of the boys who shall take a full course, if his physical ability will permit, shall be taught some branch of mechanism that shall be suitable to his taste and capacity. And all pupils shall be instructed in reading, penmanship, orthography, grammar, geography, and mathematics, together with such other branches as are usually taught in an academy of learning. And the Old and New Testaments, the Book of Mormon and the Book of Doctrine and Covenants shall be read, and their doctrines inculcated in the academy, close quote. Young clearly wanted the doctrines of Jesus Christ integrated with the study of other useful topics. The deed also emphasizes Young's belief that education involved the liberal arts, high moral and ethical principles, and sound factual knowledge. The importance of controlling the educational curriculum in the new Brigham Young Academy was reinforced in a letter Young wrote to his son Alphaeus, in which he described why he had established the academy. Young stated that he hoped that the academy would be a place at which the children of the Latter-day Saints can receive a good education, unmixed with the pernicious atheistic influences that are to be found in so many of the higher of the country. The role of religion in the new academy was further elaborated in the instructions that Brigham Young gave to Carl G. Mazer. Young told Mazer that neither the alphabet nor the multiplication tables were to be taught without the Spirit of God. Both Young and Mazer understood this to mean that the sacred and the secular would intermingle in the new institution. In his book, School and Fireside, Mazer elaborated on the unique character of the Young institution. He wrote, quote, with a view to counteract the tendency of modern education towards infidelity, President Brigham Young did all in his power to introduce a system of training that should include the principles of the gospel, the germ of which system was planted in the founding of the Brigham Young Academy, close quote. Mazer further underscored the importance of the intermingling of the sacred and the secular in an address that he gave at the Academy's first Founders' Day. He stated that, quote, there must go through it all like a golden thread, one constant, the spirit of the latter-day work. As long as this principle shall be the mainstream of all her labors, whether in teaching the alphabet or the multiplication tables or unfolding the advanced truths of science and art, the future of Brigham Young Academy will surpass in glory the fondest hopes of her most ardent admirers, close quote. The Brigham Young Academy quickly acquired another role in Brigham Young's educational vision. One of the principal reasons for the establishment of the University of Nauvoo and later the University of Deseret was to provide the church schools with teachers, and this need still existed when the Brigham Young Academy was established. When Carl Mazer opened the second term of the academy, there were 12 students in the normal, or teacher training class. This emphasis on teacher training grew over the course of the next quarter century as the church developed a network of 22 high school level academies that all needed teachers. These academies provided the church with a means to educate Latter-day Saint elementary students in a manner consistent with the church's belief that religion should be part of the school curriculum. Several of these academies, including Brigham Young Academy, offered college-level courses. In 1903, President Benjamin Clough proposed that the academy become Brigham Young University. He felt that the college work done at the Brigham Young Academy merited the name change, and he hoped that the name change would solidify the young institution's place in the church's educational network. By 1909, the General Church Board of Education had announced that, quote, "There be no college work done in the church schools, except what is necessary to prepare teachers, and this be done in the Brigham Young University. Also that the church's teachers' college be established at the Brigham Young University," close quote. Brigham Young University had firmly established its role as providing teachers for the church's various educational endeavors, particularly the academy system. The emphasis on teacher training was not enough to guarantee that the university would survive the first of a series of reviews of the church's educational network that began in the 1920s with the appointment of Elder David O. McKay as Church Commissioner of Education. The church had become increasingly concerned that the academies were becoming a mounting drain on the church's budget. The newly appointed Commission of Education submitted a letter to the General Church Board of Education on March 3, 1920, that stated, "The problem of maintaining the present number of schools is a most difficult one, especially so in light of the absolute necessity of increasing teacher salaries in much greater proportion than either the church or the state has hitherto done." This concern was further amplified by the perception that there was growing duplication between the church's academies and the state-sponsored high schools. To answer these concerns, the Commission proposed a new focus for the church's educational network. This new focus emphasized the developing seminary and institute program and recommended that the church divest itself of several of the academies. This review occurred at the same time that Brigham Young University was looking for a new president. The man selected to be the university's new president was destined to make changes to the university's mission that continue to have important implications for the church's institutions of higher education. In early spring of 1921, the BYU Board of Trustees unanimously approved the appointment of Franklin S. Harris as university president. It was a fortunate choice for the university. Harris immediately recognized that the university's mission needed to be expanded in order to solidify its place in the church's educational network. On his first visit to campus in April 1921, Harris began to expound on how he felt the university's mission should expand. He told the assembled student body, quote, "All Mormondom cannot be educated here, but I hope to see the time when 2 of a city and 2 of a county will come here to become leaders," close quote. Harris believed that the university needed to be about producing leaders as well as training teachers. His views on leadership were expressed in his inaugural address when he stated that, quote, "It is our purpose, therefore, not only to train our students in the useful arts and sciences of the day, but also to fit them to lead in various civic, religious, and industrial problems that arise out of the complex conditions of modern life," close quote. Harris ardently believed that the university could train students to be leaders in whatever they chose as their life work. Harris also firmly believed that the university should stay true to its roots and that it could continue to provide teachers for the growing seminary and institute program. He further understood the important role that the university played in modeling the ability to intermingle the sacred and the secular. He successfully convinced church leadership that a university dedicated to the sacred and the secular, to the training of teachers, and to the development of leaders had an important role to play in the church's educational network. Harris's expansive mission for Brigham Young University would find new relevance nearly 30 years later with the establishment of the Church College of Hawaii. The Church College of Hawaii has its roots in Elder David O. McKay's World Tour of 1921. In February 1921, Elder McKay visited Hawaii and on the 7th of the month participated in a flag-raising ceremony at a school in Laie, which prompted a vision that in the future a college should be established in that area to serve not only Hawaii, but also the entire area of the South Seas in providing higher education in a religious, spiritual setting. This vision would not be realized for another 30-plus years. Beginning in 1949, local church members began to lobby church leadership for the establishment of an institution of higher education in Hawaii. They formed a committee to study the situation, and the committee reported that the pressing need was for a high school and junior college with emphasis on vocational courses. They reported that the members of the church in Hawaii of high school and college age lacked experience in leadership to a degree unusual in the general church membership. The committee further argued that if a college was established, that it should have the following purposes. 1, to build strong Latter-day Saints. 2, to develop spiritual and temporal leadership. 3, to provide general education for the students. 4, to provide opportunities for exploratory work in both academic and vocational lines. 5, to offer 2-year terminal courses in trades and vocations for certain students. And 6, to provide preparatory programs for those who should continue on to senior colleges and universities. It is interesting to note that the first 2 items on their list involved the intermingling of the sacred and the secular and the development of leaders. In 1954, the church officially announced that a college would be established in Hawaii and that classes would commence during the fall semester 1955. In early 1955, it was announced that the new college would be on church land in Laie. President David O. McKay presided at the groundbreaking services in February 1955 and emphasized what he saw as the reasons for establishing a new church college. Quote, "First, the things pertaining to God and his kingdom, a testimony to the existence of deity. Secondly, that those who are obeying those principles will develop manhood, character, and make noble men and women. The world needs them. One man said, the world needs men who cannot be bought or sold, men who will scorn to violate the truth. Genuine gold, that is what this school is going to produce. More than that, they will be leaders, not leaders only on this island, but everywhere. All the world is hungering for them," close quote. Reuben D. Law, the first president of the college, also spoke at the groundbreaking and underscored the role of religion at the new institution. He said, quote, "We must have an institution that deals not only with the various phases of learning, but also with the great principles and ideals of the gospel. This education must always emphasize the great principles and truth in our program of education," close quote. President McKay and President Law outlined the reasons for establishing the new school. They were 1, to study the secular through the lens of the sacred, and 2, to train leaders for Hawaii and other parts of the world. Their vision was remarkably similar to the one that Franklin S. Harris had successfully developed for Brigham Young University. Administrators of the new college carefully considered the needs of students and decided that book learning and without an adequate library and church activities, important and necessary as these surely are not sufficient to prepare students to learn how to live in a modern world, and that the students needed to engage in a variety of cultural, social, and civic activities in order to become effective citizens, good family members, contributing members of the church. The committee recommended that a variety of cultural activities be made available to students to enrich their education. These expanded activities offered students opportunities to expand their leadership skills and gain a greater understanding of the world around them. Students at the Church College of Hawaii were constantly reminded of the expectations that church leaders had for them. The student newspaper reported that Bishop Isaacson, a member of the presiding bishopric, had told students, quote, Is it just by chance that we are attending the Church College of Hawaii? No, says Bishop Isaacson. We are a select few who are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. Close quote. Students were expected to develop both spiritual and temporal leadership skills and use them to better their homes wherever they happen to settle. As early as 1958, administrators at the Church College of Hawaii were lobbying to add 2 years to the college curriculum and become a 4-year college with a strong teacher training program. Then President Richard T. Wooten wrote to Owen J. Cook, the chair of the Pacific Board of Trustees, that, quote, a church college 4-year teacher training program would produce more Latter-day Saint teachers for the Hawaiian and other Pacific systems, and would provide island people to help man the church schools in the Pacific at a savings to the church and great financial help to the trained young people, helping the strength of the kingdom in the Pacific. The dire need for teachers in Hawaii and elsewhere practically guarantees ready employment for the additional saints that we can train, close quote. Administrators at the Church College of Hawaii were rewarded for their efforts in 1960 when the first presidency announced through the Pacific Board that the Church College of Hawaii was to become, in addition to a junior college, a 4-year teacher training institution. Church leaders hoped that the young college would provide teachers for many of the schools and seminaries in the Pacific. With the addition of teacher training to its mission of producing leaders for the islands of the Pacific and providing those budding leaders with spiritual experiences, the Church College of Hawaii was beginning to resemble the church's flagship institution of higher education, Brigham Young University. In 1974, the Church College of Hawaii was organizationally affiliated with Brigham Young University and became Brigham Young University Hawaii, a status that it maintains today. Institutions of higher education in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have historically played 3 roles. 1, providing an environment in which the sacred can be taught alongside the secular. 2, training teachers for the church's seminary and institute programs as well as the remaining church schools. And 3, producing leaders in both temporal and spiritual matters. In an epoch of tremendous growth in the church, one might ask if these rationales still justify the significant investment that the church makes annually in its 3 universities, particularly when it is noted that a dwindling percentage of young people can have the opportunity to attend one of these institutions. In 1988, Elder Jeffrey R. Holland, then president of Brigham Young University, argued that, quote, the most conspicuous and fundamental reason for a school in Zion is plainly and simply that it is our theology, close quote. According to President Holland, education is at the heart of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It is found throughout the activities of the Latter-day Saints. Church services are geared around learning the gospel better. Family activities are centered on developing a greater understanding of our roles as men and women. And temple activities are centered on enriching our understanding of our relationship with divinity. Each of these activities is centered on education. Holland further argued that the church needs universities in a symbolic way that demonstrates our commitment to education, a point that I'll come back to. The church's need for leadership remains a compelling reason for maintaining institutions of higher education. One of our religion's distinctive features is its emphasis on lay leadership. Lynn Heinrichsen has argued that as long as it is accompanied by a continuing commitment to serve God and His church, advanced education gives an individual greater power to help build the kingdom. Franklin S. Harris understood this concept when he took the helm at Brigham Young University in the 1920s, and his emphasis on leadership is now a standard part of the experience at each of the church's universities. Brigham Young University's current mission statement says, quote, all instruction, programs, and services at BYU, including a wide variety of extracurricular experiences, should make their own contribution toward the balanced development of the total person, close quote. The purpose of Brigham Young University is to enable students to meet both personal and global challenges in creative ways that leave the world a better place. Students are equipped to lead the way in solving the world's problems. Training teachers also remains an important, if somewhat diminishing, reason for maintaining institutions of higher education. The church's burgeoning population of young people of school age and the need to ensure that their education is balanced between the secular and the sacred has led to an expansion in the seminary and institute program. The church's universities play an important role in providing the teachers for those programs. Approximately 30% of the seminary and institute teachers hired each year are trained at the pre-service centers affiliated with Brigham Young University and Brigham Young University, Idaho. The church continues to maintain institutions of higher education because they provide a place where disciple scholars can model what it means to be truly educated spiritually as well as intellectually. President Gordon B. Hinckley told a devotional assembly at Brigham Young University that, quote, "You have a unique and dedicated faculty to teach you. They bring to this great responsibility the learning of all the ages of man in a vast variety of fields of knowledge. They are, for the most part, dedicated Latter-day Saints, men and women who feel as at home in the house of the Lord as they feel in the classrooms of this university. When all is said and done, it is not this elaborate campus that really counts. It is the faculty who teach you, who lead you, who encourage you, who help you find your way as you go forward with your studies," close quote. President Hinckley also underscored several other reasons for maintaining institutions of higher education in the priesthood session of the October 1999 General Conference. The first reason is quite simply that the university has brought much favorable notice to the church. It is a platform through which the church has become known throughout the world. He further stated that, quote, "We shall continue to support BYU and its Hawaii campus. We shall continue to support Ricks College. We are not likely to build other university campuses. We wish that we might build enough to accommodate all who desire to attend. But this is out of the question. They are so terribly expensive. But we shall keep these flagships testifying to the great and earnest commitment of this church to education, both ecclesiastical and secular, and while doing so, prove to the world that excellent secular learning can be gained in an environment of religious faith," close quote. The universities are a powerful symbol of the church's commitment to education. It is perhaps the symbolism of our commitment to education that is the most powerful reason for maintaining universities. It is interesting to note that at each of the church's 3 universities there is a temple located on or extremely near its grounds. These 2 powerful symbols, the university and the temple, underscore the Latter-day Saint commitment to education in all of its secular and sacred facets. Again, we have the university and the temple. Thank you.